people, that is coming off the field and into back into the town. Now, the Battle of Chancellorsville showed that the field hospitals and ambulance systems were coming into their own. The Battle of Gettysburg tested that system, though. When George Meade assumed command of the Union Army, he ordered only a minimum number of ambulances to accompany the march north. The purpose was to maximize the amount of military supplies the Army could carry. Most of the medical personnel arrived after the fighting had started. Therefore, the surgeons did not have time to set up a hospital site. Supplies were meager, and the lack of tents forced medical personnel to utilize local farms and buildings instead. Now, despite these obstacles, the Union Ambulance Corps successfully evacuated almost all of the wounded to the aid stations during the evening of each battle. This rapid treatment, almost Herculean effort, I like my word choice there. Yes, Union medical personnel, I even impressed myself. Union medical personnel treated 14,193 wounded Union soldiers during the battle, and an additional 6,802 Confederate wounded. 6,800 Confederates fell into Union hands. Can you imagine? That's what you get for winning the battle. You inherit 6,800 more wounded soldiers, you know. It's not good. At least not good for them. And they would have been the worst of the worst. They could have got you in that wagon, they would have, you know. So I'm not saying they didn't leave some behind that couldn't. But, yeah, it would definitely be, among the 6,800, you'd be the ones that you didn't think would make it. Triage. So, anyway. Union and Confederate surgeons worked day and night to save the lives of the men, and the job became more difficult when Letterman ordered most of the 650 surgeons to head south with the Army. George Meade's expecting to fight Lee before he gets across the Potomac, and so, ladies and gentlemen, we got a big problem. You need the surgeons. Well, the surgeons are really needed back here, but you don't want to get into a pitched battle and not have the surgeons. So the majority of them leave. Letterman assumed another battle imminent. Now, what did he leave? He left behind, out of 650 surgeons, he left behind 106 to cope with 21,000 wounded men during this battle. He appointed Surgeon Henry James to take charge of the wounded in the Gettysburg area. You want to take a guess who that is? I couldn't resist. I know. It's the Jack Benny show. Let's all take a big breath here. Oh yeah, 21,000 people. That's a lot of people. You know, Houston's only about 2,500, 3,000. Think about that. That's 7 times the size of my hometown. Wounded in this town. Wow, that's crazy. You know? I mean, if you wrap your head around that. I mean, yeah. Dr. Henry James bears a closer look. You want to get behind the scenes, don't forget this guy's name. He's born in Waterbury, I hate to slaughter that with the southern accent, Vermont, on January 24th, 1832. Well, it's Waterbury now, whatever it is. Yeah, that's like the time I was giving my first little round top tour when I returned from Vicksburg. And I got out there and I was talking about Chamberlain and I said Bowdoin College. And it's the only time on my, it's the only time on my tour that I ever had an alumnus from Bowdoin. I was quickly corrected. It wasn't via letter. It's communicated directly to me at that point. All right, in 1855, James graduates from the College of Physicians and Surgeons in NYC. By 1861, he had joined the Army as a surgeon for the 3rd Vermont Volunteer Infantry, and by 1863 had obtained a position as a commissioned surgeon. Of course he had. Prior to Gettysburg, James had directed the hospitals at Frederick, Maryland, and later the hospitals of the 6th Corps. I gotta move my knees here, I'm gonna lock up. While stationed at Gettysburg, Dr. James took extensive time to personally study the treatment of fractures and amputations. You might as well learn while you work. Or are you not trying to get better? I hope you are. For my sake. Some of his findings were published in the post-war years in the Vermont Medical Society. All right, not to veer off into this, ladies and gentlemen, that's why Sickles' leg is still around. Right? It's a specimen. So half of y'all don't even believe me, but look it up. Sickles' leg, it's on the internet. You own it.
I've seen it.
Have you seen it? I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. You got me there. You got me there. All right. So if that doesn't even, I don't know what's going to take to impress you people. Give me another slide. But Dr. James was at the Gettysburg Address too. All right. Whatever. Give me a note. Stuff writer, you have no idea with this crowd. You're late. You missed it. My best material.
Your stuff right?
Some of my best.
Stuff right,
I'm thinking
Frank.
about walking off the stage. All right. The most immediate need for the wounded besides personal care was supplies. Confederate forces had burnt the railroad bridge. Well, no kidding. Across Rock Creek, leaving the town of Gettysburg isolated. You Gettysburg bus, pay attention to what I'm about to tell you. It was not until July 10th that the bridge was rebuilt. Despite this, 4,000 Union soldiers had already been moved from Gettysburg. That'd be by wagons, people. 4,000 loads of human beings had been carried back to the rear to be put on the railroad. Probably in Westminster, if I had to guess. Non-stop train headed back of a caravan of ambulances. Back and forth. I don't know if they had, well, you'd have to, I don't know. They worked. The soldiers boarded either at a makeshift terminal at Rock Creek or at Westminster. However, this left roughly 10,000 Union soldiers still in the Gettysburg area by July 10th. With the reopening of the railroad, though, when they got that bridge reopened, and that started picking up. Once you get the railroad going, you can transport people. You can bring in flat cars, you can bring in box cars. As long as they can get in there, or you can get them in there, you can get them out of there. And so steam power is a lot more efficient than wagons, right? This nation is progressing. Well, they're using technology for warfare, or in this case, for medicine, you know, as a result of warfare. So anyway, as you know, only one railroad line was located in Gettysburg. As a result, many soldiers were shipped from Frederick. The gentleman in the back said he couldn't hear. So, Cousin Frank, I've been trying my whole time. As a result of only one railroad line, many soldiers were shipped from Frederick, and according to one estimate, 20,342 wounded from the Army of the Potomac located at Gettysburg, plus the Confederates. In 2 weeks after that railroad reopened, they shipped 15,425 soldiers. And where did they go? They went to those hospitals that was organized by Charles Tripler in the northern cities. See how you starting to piece this thing together? It's working. I don't care what you do. The faster you can treat them, the better. I mean, no. An additional 2,500 Confederate soldiers were shipped to New Jersey.
Is that a prison camp?
Watch it, man.
All right. And a lot of people, I got a lot of friends in New Jersey. Now,
That's right.
my friend over here, okay, I won't say anything. Oh, my God. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't remember the last time you brought me some capricola. Oh, yeah. Anyway, an additional 2,500 Confederate soldiers were shipped to New Jersey opposite New York City. Big transit hub there, seriously. Instead of continuing on rail through the city, they were diverted around New York City because of the draft riots. If you watch Gangs of New York, not that it's a historically accurate film, but historically speaking, it takes you right up to the edge of the New York draft riots. If I remember correct, the Navy bombards Manhattan in the movie, which is entertaining within its own right. I mean, how ludicrous that is. I hope it is. So, they had to be diverted. The next day, 76 wounded Confederates were shipped out, and the following day saw 327 men leave for Point Lookout. Union officials quickly ran into trouble when it was determined that only 1,400 beds existed at Point Lookout. So quickly the Confederate prison where they want to dump all these Confederate wounded doesn't have enough hospital room for them. Now, on July 5th, right here, Meade issued orders that the medical director will establish a general hospital at Gettysburg for the wounded that cannot be moved with the Army. Despite the order, there appears little effort on the part of Union authorities to establish this hospital quickly. This is probably as a result, as stated previously, that Confederates had burnt the railroad bridge. All right. North of Gettysburg. Sergeant James did not receive medical tents until July 15th. How are you going to get them out of a barn? How are you going to pull them out of a, they call them shebangs, those little makeshift tents they had. Where are you going to put them? Okay, so you want to help somebody. What are you going to do with them? By July 22nd, 6 rows of tents. This is how fast. What is this? 22nd? Be almost 3 weeks after the battle. 6 rows of tents with about 400 tents in each row have been erected on the George Wolfe Farm site. Each tent held 12 beds and was equipped with a Sibley stove. I bet that was hot. James commissioned the site Camp Letterman and named Sergeant Cyrus N. Chamberlain as director. Give me a note. The site was ideal as a hospital. The area offered shade, it offered water, and it had several wells which were sunk into the area. You ideally would like well water. Okay, well, streams will do, but despite whatever you think about your ancestors, they really didn't like drinking out of mud puddles. Okay, if you'd ever like to treat yourself, go ahead. And you can figure that out in a hurry, that would be the last thing they would do. Okay, so it had everything that they needed. These trees were apparently one of the few stands of timber along the York Pike near Gettysburg, too. And finally, and I'm going to stress this one more time, it's near the railroad. It's near the railroad. So when the train comes in, they can bring in 1,200 tents, and when the train rolls out, it can roll out with more soldiers. Everything, that train is not wasted. They are using that train. And once that train starts moving, then it's, I can't figure out train system. But, they're moving. Now, the site was so well adapted for troops that other troops had utilized the Wolfe Farm prior to Gettysburg, including the 10th New York Cavalry and Juba Early's division. we think encamped there? Everybody getting their metal detector going on out. Well, I got news for y'all in just a second. December 13th. When Camp Letterman opened, the site held several thousand soldiers. Medical Inspector John M. I'm going to get the C-U-Y-L-E-R. Kyler? Say it. Kyler? Noted that as of July 20th, 5,072 soldiers still remained in Gettysburg. Of the 5,000, about 1,651 were Union, 1,421 rebels, or 3,072 soldiers would have to remain for the present. So to go back to what I told you at the very beginning of this program, the 3,072 soldiers at Camp Letterman are the worst of the worst. Like, they have the means to evacuate them, and they are so badly hurt that they think it would kill them to get them out of there. So.
And what is the population of the town of Gettysburg?
Well, it's about that, to start, bringing them in. You also need to understand too that the Letterman system which is being implemented here, is finally coming to fruition. And what they've done, in case the bigger picture, I forget to give you the bigger picture, which is more likely. The Letterman, thanks. Yeah. Well, it's the truth. I'll go home tonight and I'll be sitting in bed and I'll be thinking about, boy, I left that out. I didn't. What Letterman did is, and you Gettysburg buffs, a lot of you, the majority of you, and I recognize so many faces, I don't want to call anybody out, because I recognize so many faces. Y'all come here every year. And you're here for the 4th here, obviously, today. The Gettysburg soldiers, when they consolidate them, if you've driven around here a lot as a battlefield buff, you've seen how many hospitals there are behind the front lines. Farmhouses, or even some homes in town are labeled that way. What Letterman does is, instead of trying, can you imagine, and somebody could probably figure it out, how many hospital sites there were. I would say, I don't know, maybe around 100 if I had to guess. Can you imagine trying to resupply all those little sites and big sites? Can you imagine trying to keep up with that? How would you ever identify all that on the fly? And spread out. I mean, the Confederate wounded from July 2nd be back here and back down the Hagerstown Road, 116, How would you ever figure all that out? So what Letterman did is he sorted them, triage, and he took the worst of the worst and he consolidated them, because he could treat them better if they were all concentrated together. That's the Letterman system, efficiency. The faster you treat the wounded on the battlefield, the higher the probability of survival. That's what he's after. And in this case, he's trying to I don't know if he's trying to keep them alive, but he's trying to give them their last dignity. And some people, these are just I don't want to put it this way, but these are the anomalies. There's always, if you shoot enough people, there are going to be anomalies. People that should die or be dead will be alive for whatever reason. I have no idea. It's just the law of probability. Now, I'll give you one good example, and I will give you the best one I can think of, and try not to extend the thing. We want to celebrate the 4th here. For whatever reason, and don't ask me how this happened, they had a soldier at Camp Letterman that had a hole through it. I mean, they said you could put your fist through it. And apparently whatever went through him, it mangled his organs. And I guess the heat off of it or whatever, I don't know if it cauterized it or what, I don't know. But whatever it did, he didn't die for like several weeks, and he lived long enough for his wife to be summoned. And so here she comes, and a wound of that nature, they had him sedated pretty quickly probably. But, you know, he's obviously in a lot of pain. I mean, if morphine was ever made for somebody, it was him. And I can't think of anybody better. But the sad thing is, the point is that they had to let the morphine wear off in order to allow him to regain consciousness. And when he regained consciousness, there was his wife in front of him. And of course, they came out and they embraced together and hugged as best they could. I don't know what but as best they could. But the sad thing is, they couldn't keep him conscious because he's in too much pain. So they had to knock him back out, you know, by whatever means. And don't shake too much. And whole lot of shaking going on. Well, that'd be something. Best story of the whole campfire, Matt takes the header. Right there on the bench. Is there a nurse in the thing? You're not going to leave, are you? Okay. How about a round of applause? She thinks I forgot about her. This site, and I might as well. Oh, I should tell you this part of the story because I'll forget about it. I was about to forget about it. The lady, whoever the lady was, I don't have a name for you. Whoever the lady was stayed at the hospital, kept volunteering, and for several weeks. Now I'll allow you to search your own, you know, feelings and figure that out. I mean, you know, what do you know about what, you know? So, but you know, if I had to take a guess, she's grieving. I mean, her husband is buried in the cemetery that they quickly established at Camp Letterman. So I don't know. Interesting. What I find intriguing about that is, you know, we know obviously we know that story, but how many do we not know? You know, how many times did that happen? You know, and you don't know about. Just don't know. All right. Thank you for taking over responsibilities. I didn't mean to hand y'all off on that. Getting dark, I can't see. I got these I was watching a newscast one night. And I was like, he put these glasses on, and I was like, whoa. I was like, you look really intelligent. And I jumped on Amazon. And I said to myself, I need small, intelligent glasses. And this is what it came up with. How about it? I'm going through here ever since. I was up against a mirror at one of these stores on Steinway earlier today. And I saw my normal reading glasses, and I thought, oh my God, I've become that person that I didn't want to be in the 1980s. Only in the 80s, you understand that. Okay, so let's get Mom involved. We got this series of Tyson Brothers shots. The first series is 5 photographs. Isaac and Charles Tyson were originally from Philadelphia. The earliest known advertisement for their gallery is August 22nd, 1859. In 1861, the gallery relocated from the northeast corner of the town square, the old courthouse, to the south side of York Street. And ironically, a second story of a building owned by David Wills. As a matter of trivia for the Gettysburg buffs, at the time of the battle, Charles Tyson lived on the south side of Chambersburg Street, about the 3rd block, which is today 216 Chambersburg Street. Now, who else knows that? Bill Frazanito does. Okay, give me another one. The 5 photographs which you're about to see, or are seeing right now, are actually a panoramic view of the hospital site. These views were placed in order from left to right and were taken from some type of elevated platform. The photographs probably took place in late September of 1863. Give me another one over there. How does one know this? Because of the ornamentation adorning the tents. The wreaths were placed as part of a banquet held for the soldiers on September 23rd. So the pictures must come after this date. All right, give me a note. In this photograph, one can see the drainage ditch along the edge of the camp. That's that line on the photograph. Note the construction of other ditches along the camp streets in order to connect with the main. One other note, Camp Letterman was located on somewhat high ground. Now, if you look at the background of this photograph, you can barely see the edge of town off in the distance. However, if we go to the next one, a clear picture is right here. Not very good, but this is the German Reformed Church, which still stands today, which you can barely see right there. All right. This image is looking across the field of what is today the modern Giants food parking lot. I told y'all about them metal detectors right there. Give me a note. With a large number of wounded men to feed, a suitable kitchen was established. Soldiers' diets dramatically improved after the kitchen was built. Henry James apparently spared no expense either. In one voucher, he claimed 1,532 pounds of butter, 1,232 dozen eggs, and 825 chickens, for a grand total of $900.79. In addition, Jane purchased 101 gallons of oysters, which they thought had a medicinal effect to it, costing $111. Now, can't see her very well, but this lady right here is Anna Holstein. She served as the matron in charge at the hospital. She and her husband had previously served as nurses at general hospitals at Antietam and Frederick. As the supervisor, she exercised her authority to the fullest. One nurse recalled that the staff, quote, was forbidden the privilege of preparing extra food for ourselves and were not even allowed to go inside the kitchen. Mrs. Holstein even went so far as, quote, to keep a guard with fixed bayonet at the entrance. Maybe it's the biggest laugh I've got now. She's like that. She's something now. I wasn't coming there. I'll try. Now, if I could entertain you even better. All right. This one's for this picture and a few of the following were taken by Peter Weaver, who at this time his studio was in Hanover. As one can imagine, operations were occurring frequently at Camp Letterman. Despite the battle being over for several weeks, gangrene, infections, other things would cause operations would have to be reperformed in order to try to save the patient. And let's just face it, people, as I said in the beginning of this talk, I should say. Long week. At the beginning of this talk, you know, they're working fast. And not all surgeons are created equal. You got to fix a lot of stuff that people messed up because they're working fast. I hate to put it that trivial, but I mean, you stand a man up there for 12 hours and have him work at an operating table, and what's he going to do? Get better? You know, I mean, you know, he's doing the best he could, you know. But anyway, they're doing these amputations. Go ahead. Now this particular one right here This picture is actually real, meaning that this is not posed. They're actually carrying out an operation. And those of you up front can see the dark part right here. That's blood. That's why it's dark. That's why the bucket's beneath it. Right there. All right. So Frenia Buckland, a nurse at the site, possibly witnessed this very operation. I'll read it to you. One fine-looking fellow, a son of Aaron's Isle, whose name was Peter Brock, declared with emphasis that he would have his wounded shoulder examined by a surgeon. He finally succeeded by perseverance in obtaining his examination. He was found to be in a very critical situation, and one after another of the surgeons were called in until a regular council of doctors were held over him in the ward. It was found necessary to take off a section of the bone, and the operation was begun in full view of the other patients. After mangling him for a time, partly holding him under the influence of chloroform, they removed him to the amputating room, where they paused a while to have their photographs taken. The suffering patient lying in this critical condition. My blood boiled at the cruelty of the scene, but I could not avert the torture for a moment. For 3 hours he was kept under the knife and saw, and I was directed to hold my peace. He was brought back to his bed, as white as a dead man in his coffin. No semblance remaining of the ruddy-cheeked soldier who lay there 3 hours before, with strength in every part of his body, save the wounded shoulder. Right there. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? That picture survived. Give me the next one. All right. Oh, you're fine. Thank you. You okay? Whew. How about it? Let's have one of the fourth. About old Matt's all he gonna get right here. I'm trying. Oh, I had to give him $5 for it hot. That's what my daddy said about my cousin one time. He said my daddy was making him stay over sharpen the saw, you know. And cousin Scott, he won't leave. My dad said he'd give $5 for a hot beer. That was just the truth. All right, this is an interesting picture also. This is purportedly a shot of the embalming tent at Camp Letterman. The sign reads, Dr. Chamberlain and Lyford's office. It is believed that Chamberlain is to the left and Lyford to the right. These two gentlemen are attributed with embalming the body of General Lou Armistead. That may be the biggest awe I got out of y'all. According to a letter in the Batchelder papers, quote, Dr. Chamberlain told me that he thought Armistead's friends would pay a good price for his body. Hence, after it was laying in the rough box buried in the Confederate part of the 11th Corps Cemetery on the Spangler Farm, 4 weeks afterwards he embalmed it. And he was right. That investment paid off. They did fetch him, that body. What do you know? All right, give me another. Now, if you look closely at the gentleman on the left, the gentleman standing in this photo, right here, is Jacob Schenkel of the 62nd Pennsylvania. That's him. Schenkel had been assigned as a nurse to Camp Letterman on July 31st when the 5th Corps wounded were moved to the campsite. And he stayed the entire period. I'm going to get you to go backwards on this one, okay? Look at this gentleman right here. Okay? Now go back. You recognize him? Go forward one. Huh? See what they're doing? He's standing in the box. About all I can do for y'all. All right, give me another one. Thank you. In a situation such as Camp Letterman, conventional military boundaries between sides quickly broke down. There they are. You want to see how they were dressed in battle here? Confederate hospital attendees had access to the same medicine and supplies that Union counterparts had also. Did you hear me? Because y'all been listening to me a long time.
Yeah.
You don't hear that much in warfare anymore. You wouldn't see that in Ukraine. You would not see that. The Union treated those Confederate prisoners the way they wanted their prisoners treated. And that's the exact reason the United States did that. Because they wanted the United States prisoners, wounded prisoners, treated well. So you treat the enemy well. It works out in the end, you know. You don't go cutting your nose off, spite your face out there. It's unusual, people. And I think on the 4th of July, you know, we're so hard on our country sometimes, you know, as well we should be, but I guess. But, you know, in the middle of all that war, you got enemies that are actually countrymen laying side by side. You know, the Confederate had their section and the Union had their section, but they're out there together, as you can see. Only in America, I think, would that happen. I've never heard, well, very rarely, I would think. Okay, but it was not all roses. Many Southern sympathizers came up from Baltimore and supplied the Confederates, which led to some hard feelings on some people's part, and, quote, while being confined in such close proximity led to some hostile exchanges between the Union and Confederate wounded. Give me another. To a far greater extent, the discourse it afforded served to break down the differences between them. For the time being, regardless of where they had come from, they were simply men trying to endure and survive the same types of painful and disfiguring and personally inflicted injuries. I won't read that again. Disarmed and out of uniform, they were no longer Rebs and Yanks. They were all just wounded soldiers. And their staff and volunteers who came into the camp almost universally regarded them as that. One Confederate personnel noted that they did not realize they were prisoners of war until they arrived in Baltimore. Nobody's going to laugh. They had become, this is good. Now listen to this. What other country? Quote, they had become sleek and fat, and the change from plenty to scarcity was a blow to their ravenous stomachs that was felt keenly. Because they weren't used to, you know. All right. In conclusion, despite the triumphs of Camp Letterman, the bare-naked truth is this, that few acres of ground located today on Highway 30, which is now recently gone under the second half, is now a grocery store and some apartments, if they're open yet. I don't know if they're open yet.
Nope.
They're not. I heard they want a penny for them, though. Lord have mercy. Who got that kind of money around here? I guess somebody does. You know, that site, if you go out there to the giant supermarket, was one of the saddest sights on earth. Only the most critical cases were left at this site. Quote, the most fastidious surgeon could not mangle flesh or bones more splendidly for scientific purposes than this continuous battle has done, observed one member of the Sanitary Commission. Quote, every class and character of contusion and fracture and penetrating wound from shot and shell of the worst description is to be found under the 300 tents which constitute Camp Letterman. Among the examples were 345 gunshot fractures of the femur. Think about no femur. 345 shattered femurs. I don't know how you fix that. In these cases, 158 of these wounds required amputation, and out of that number of 158, now this is a severe type wound, 101 of them died. Trying to fix that, because that's probably a hip amputation. In another example, Nurse Sophronia Buckland recorded that out of, let me get up here and face off, that out of 22 rebels in her ward, 13 died. Oh mercy, the suffering Cornelia Hancock wrote home. All the worst are dying rapidly. I saw one of my best men die yesterday. He wore away to skin and bone, was anxious to recover, but prayed he might find it for the best for him to be taken from his suffering. He was the one who said if there was a heaven, I would go to it. I hope he will get there before I do. She concluded her letter home. I think war is a hellish way of settling a dispute.
Amen.
Happy 4th, ladies and gentlemen.